So most beginners are often led to believe that fast wide open apertures like f1.8, f1.4, f1.2 is the only way to get super blurry backgrounds. But what if I told you that we can still get super blurry backgrounds even at f3.5? Let me show you.
And shoutouts to PPA for sponsoring a portion of this video.
Chapter 1. How distance affects blur.
Let's take a look at these two shots right here, both shot at 18mm f3.5 with an APS-C crop sensor camera. The second image on the right here has way more blur, despite the fact that it was shot at the same focal length and at the same aperture value. The only difference is I got physically closer. Distance can have an impact on the amount of blur that you can get in a photo. And in combination with a depthy background, we're getting that nice blur, that bokeh that anyone with a camera yearns for.
Now the reason why we're demonstrating 18mm f3.5 is because that's the widest that most people would have when they own the starter kit lens.
Now, fair warning, you don't want to do this with a human subject, at least not with a wide-angle lens. Getting too up close and personal is going to make their face look distorted, which in turn, your subject will make your face distorted with their fist. The blur, the bokeh, oh, the distance, okay, so let's back up a bit and show you another example. So I'm going to take a full body shot at 18mm f3.5. And now I'm going to zoom into 50, but I still want to get a full body shot, so I'll step back a little bit. And mostly with kit lenses, your aperture will likely change to f5.6, so let me just demo that for you. Now the first image here is taken at 18mm f3.5, and the second image here is taken at 50mm f5.6. Despite f5.6 being a much narrower aperture, because we zoomed into 50mm, we're still getting a decent amount of blur. It's the same idea as earlier where we got physically closer, but now we got closer by zooming in.
This is why you'll often see with longer telephoto lenses, such as the 400 to 800mm lens, have aperture values of f6.3 to f8, but still giving off those creamy blurry backgrounds despite not being f1.8.
Now, hot tip for you, be mindful of your background. Shooting against a flat background will likely give you unappealing results, regardless if you're shooting at f1.8 or f5.6. Having some depth, aka a ton of space behind your subject, can make a dramatic difference to your photos. And be sure to stick around till the end where I'll share with you why I love using f8 in nighttime low light situations.
Moving on to Chapter 2. Lens quality.
But okay, Michael, I get it. Fast aperture lenses like f1.8, f1.4, f1.2 are sexy. I too love those creamalicious, blurry backgrounds. But has this ever happened to you? Where shooting at the widest open aperture can give you unsharp results. Let's explore why that is. 1, it's the quality of your lens. Or 2, you may not be using the most optimal setting on your camera. We'll start with 1. So most modern high quality lenses won't have this issue too much, but budget prime lenses or older lenses, especially the vintage ones, might be soft at their widest aperture. That's why you see lens reviewers testing sharpness so extensively, analyzing the center of the frame and around the 4 corners of the image. Now center usually fares the best, but anything even remotely outside of it can be a blur. Stopping down gradually at each stop, usually between f2.8 to f4, will clear up any softness, but every lens will be different, so definitely experiment with yours.
Chapter 3. The confusion of depth of field.
Reason number 2, if you have a modern lens and you're still getting unsharp results, then likely it's a setting and a control issue. When shooting wide open, for example at f1.8, means you're dealing with a shallow depth of field. You only have a very razor thin line of plane to get your subject in focus. Okay, let's back this up because it gets very confusing and it took me years to understand this, but for you, it'll click in seconds. You see, it's hard to visualize depth because we're only looking through our camera in one dimension. But when we imagine our shoot from a top-down bird's eye point of view, that's when it's gonna make more sense. Come on, let me show you. So we got these lovely character models here, Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy. And this thin red line right here represents f1.8, which is fitting because it has a very thin, shallow depth of field. So when we're taking photos, it's important that we stay as steady as possible. Because if we're rocking back and forth even just slightly, there's a strong chance we would still miss focus despite the camera telling us otherwise. Now compare this to this thick red line right here, which represents f8. We now have a much deeper depth of field. So even if we're accidentally swaying back and forth, there's a strong chance that we will still get our subject Zorro right here in focus. So whenever we're shooting wide open, my advice is to use a faster shutter speed, at least 1/125 to start with, put the camera into continuous burst mode, stay as steady as you can, and fire off a few shots. Now you should have at least 1 or 2 shots that are tack sharp at f1.8.
Chapter 4. Don't be afraid to stop down.
Now, despite me being on YouTube for a decade now, especially in the photography space, there's still a strange belief that we should always use our lenses at the widest open aperture, no matter the occasion. Using anything beyond the widest open aperture is an absolute waste of money. God forbid we turn it up 1 notch and now we're shooting at f2 instead of f1.8. Oh, my precious bokeh! But just because we can shoot at f1.8 for everything doesn't mean we always should be shooting at f1.8. There is a time and place for it, and here are my 3 examples.
Example 1.
Now, we often say on this channel, blurring out the background too much can make our photos lose context, the overall story. For example, we have Vivienne here standing in front of a mysterious cityscape. Shooting at 85mm f1.8 while we're focusing on her, we can't really make out where she's at. It just feels too studio, if you know what I mean. But by stopping down to f5.6 and even f8, we get a clearer picture of where she's at. No pun intended. Ah, New York City, the Big Apple.
Example 2.
Moving on, say we want to capture the beautiful cityscape instead during the daytime where our buildings are way off in the distance. Now we could shoot at f1.8 because we're focusing on something that's way out in the distance. We still get a lot of the surrounding areas in focus. Granted, we're using a moderately modern lens here. However, even the most modern of lenses can still suffer from vignetting at wide open apertures. That's just the nature of these fast prime lenses. Again, stopping down at f2.8 or even f4 will eliminate any vignetting issues, and even in the case of modern high quality lenses, we get sharper results from the center and all the way into the corners. So don't be afraid to stop down when photographing land or cityscapes to get the best image quality possible. Then, in post, you can add the vignetting back in because at least then, you are in control of your own image. Let me give you another example because good things come in 3s. But first, I want to share with you an incredible resource for going pro in photography.
As a longtime PPA member, you've heard me talk about their amazing benefits for photographers, such as gear insurance, which covers up to $15,000 in coverage, as well as legal protection through their indemnification trusts. But today, I want to share about Imaging USA. As a PPA member, you also get free tickets to Imaging USA, happening on January 11th to the 13th, 2026 in Nashville, Tennessee. It is the largest photography expo and conference in the US with over 10,000 photographers all in one place. You get amazing keynote speakers, classes that will help you grow your business and your skills, and cool exhibits to check out the latest photography gear.
To learn more, check out my link in the description box below
For $25 off your membership and get the opportunity to attend Imaging USA 2026.
Thank you, PPA, for sponsoring us. Now back to the video.
Example 3.
So when I'm photographing something unpredictable, where a subject can appear into my frame any second now, I would usually stop down on my aperture to ensure that I have a higher chance of getting a sharp image. For example, here at this rainy cherry blossom shoot, I want to capture a train going by these pink flowers surrounding it as my foreground. And the lens that I'm using here is a full frame 24-70mm f2.8. I think it's coming. Now, if I set my focus at the center before the train appears, the camera would focus on the building in the back. But because a train is unpredictable, I can't trust my camera to grab focus of the train when it comes in. So what I'm gonna do here is to stop down at f4, winding up my depth of field, and set the focus on the train tracks because that's the closest thing to the train. Now, all that's left to do is to wait for the subject to make a grand entrance. And bam! Choo-choo, mother focus.
Diffraction.
Now you might be asking, why not just run the dial and max out our aperture to ensure everything is in focus? While logically that does make sense, using the maximum narrowest aperture of our lenses like f16 or f22, depending on your lens, could actually lead to loss of overall sharpness.
Bro, Vong, what the how can that be? Shouldn't everything be in focus and tack sharp? Make it make sense.
While it does sound ridiculous, at this high of an f-stop, you'll get what's known as diffraction, where the hole is so tight and so small, the light has trouble entering it because then it causes it to spread and bend through and interfering with itself, resulting in a loss of sharpness in the final image. Okay, that's a little hard to imagine, right? So imagine this instead. Trying to catch water with a cup versus a small tube. With a small tube, the flow of the water becomes more chaotic and it spreads out. Light does something very similar at very small apertures. So it's best to avoid using the maximum narrowest f-stop unless you really have to. That and keep your sensor and lens clean to avoid seeing dust and dirt in your photos. Yuck.
Chapter 5. F8 in low light?
Now often you'll hear that it is highly recommended to get a fast aperture lens like f1.8 for low light, especially when shooting handheld. And I 100% agree with this advice because I freaking hate bringing a tripod around. But as much as I dislike bringing a tripod with me, there are rare moments, especially at night, where I would go through the trouble of bringing one, and I have never regretted the shots that I've gone with it. I often stop down to f8 just to utilize a slower shutter speed so the camera can gather in more light into the sensor, thus giving me cool effects like light trails from these cars. But more importantly, at f8, we get these nice starburst twinkle effects from the light sources.
Ooh.
Magical. So remember, don't be afraid to stop down because you can't go wrong with Jason Vong. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to check out PPA and we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.